There's more to my life story than skipping grade 2, but I was labeled a gifted child at around 6, 7 years old. And it really was quite fundamental in how I turned out. Like, there were no TED Talks in 1992, but I really felt like I had to do something extraordinary with my life. And part of me is really trying to do that still. And part of me is just like, take all the pressure off. All my life has been trying to get the pressure off. This is your strange and beautiful life. Hi, everybody, and welcome to This is Your Strange and Beautiful Life. My name is Erica J. Schmidt, and on my podcast, I talk to people who may or may not have had the chance to transform their lives into spectacular TED Talks. And today, my guest is me, Erica J. Schmidt. I decided that I was going to get somebody to interview me, so I picked my pal, Vadim Gran, otherwise known as Vad. So what you need to know about Vad is he has an excellent aspirational beard. Yeah, serious, elaborate beard, an Eeyore sense of humor, and he infuses his humor into his storytelling and barbecue banter. Vad has the best barbecues you will ever be invited to. He co-hosts them with his partner, Andrea. Used to co-host them with his darling dog, Jake. Dogs are like built-in heartbreak. May Jake rest in peace. And in 2019, Vad made his Fringe Festival debut performing the wildly popular show Happy-ish, a Russian immigrant's guide to smiling. It was by all accounts a smash hit. These days, Vad is ultra busy, first-class adulting and flipping burgers at the epic summer barbecues. Vad recently upgraded his skills in computer programming, and maybe he's going to upgrade his skills in podcasting. Vad, so happy you're here. Welcome to This is Your Strange and Beautiful Life. How are you doing?
Hey, Erica. Good to be here. I'm doing okay. How are you?
Good. Yeah, good to have you here. Thanks for your help with the new microphone stands. And yeah, it's been a while since we've done an episode, and I thought it would be easier just to interview myself than another guest. And yeah, so the first thing is, have you ever interviewed anybody before?
I have, actually. Quite a long time ago.
Okay.
I've done some writing for online publications in the reviews of the shows, and I've interviewed some people.
Okay, great. So, old hat.
Been a while, though.
Okay, do you want to introduce me?
I will introduce you.
Okay.
I think if we're going to get into it, I'm going to start with introducing our interview subject.
Wow, this is so fun. I've never been the interview subject before. Okay, I'm ready.
All right. So, Erica J. Schmidt is available on all your favorite podcast venues and platforms. She's not particularly famous, but she used to be Myland's most famous cleaner as the founder of Deep Cleans with Erica J. Schmidt. May it rest in peace. She's also a little bit famous for twirling her hair incessantly. Erica's greatest life joy would be creative projects, friendship, library books, exercise, cleaning routines, and M-dashes. And your creative life includes writing, storytelling, and as of recently, stand-up comedy, right?
Yeah, recent and brief. Yeah.
And in the spring of 2023, she fulfilled her lifelong dream of starting her own podcast. This is Your Strange and Beautiful Life. And here we are. Welcome, listeners.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Goodbye, Vad. Thanks for that. Rest in peace, Deep Cleans with Erica J. Schmidt. Okay. Well, that's awkward. What's next?
Well, how are you doing?
Like, how am I doing? You know, I'm coasting. I have a reasonable job. I'm not, I would say, like hustling in terms of like podcasting projects. I'm going to do a live story at Confabulation next week. So I'm working hard on that. But like, yeah, I'm just like, I'm fine. You know what I mean? Which is like, fine is better than fine, I think.
I agree.
Yeah.
Fine comfort is underrated.
Yeah, fine is winning at life. So that's like I am fine. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Now, how did you start this podcast? How did it come about?
Okay, well, I always thought I used to have a blog called The Ecstatic Adventures of the Exuberant Bodhisattva, which I really wanted Oprah or Tim Ferriss or somebody like influential to discover and be like, wow, this is amazing. Look at this blog. She's writing about like, her yoga career, how she moved for love to like Halifax and lived happily ever after, sort of, with this big black dog. A lot about sex in The Ecstatic Adventures of the Exuberant Bodhisattva. It was a very, very tell-all, maybe that's an exaggeration, but it was just like I would put my fingers on the keyboard and it just kind of like, and if the writing didn't feel like that, like if it didn't feel like it was just coming out of my fingertips, I didn't do it. So you'll see there's like big breaks in this blog thing. But I've always really liked podcasts, and I talk a lot. You know, I feel like I have a lot of things inside me to share, and sometimes your friends can't absorb everything you have to say. So you should go like, sometimes you have too much content for the people around you. So I thought, well, I'm going to do like, I saw it as this like outlet, and it was like I was going to do voice memos to people, my vast audience. And so that was sort of like looking for a creative outlet, and lots of obstacles to starting a podcast. It's technically overwhelming and there's some expense to it. But then what kind of got me going is my aunt. If you listen to the podcast to the end, you'll know that every podcast I say thank you to my dearly departed aunt, Eileen Gunn. And she died, in her late 70s. She a bit unexpectedly of like a sudden cancer. And she gave money to her. She didn't have children. She gave a lot of money to charity, and she gave like significant, like not like you don't have to work for the rest of your life, but a generous amount to her nieces and nephews. And so I just had a little bandwidth in terms of my funds. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to buy podcast equipment, because also my 96-year-old grandmother, Mary Owen, was 96, right? And statistically, 96-year-olds, well, statistically, we will all die. But yeah, she's 96 and she was moving into a nursing home. And I thought, like, oh no, when old people move, that can be it, right? So I was like, I need to get the stories. I need to get my grandma recorded sooner rather than later. So like really like it was like March of 2023, I heard grandma was moving. I booked a trip to Perth, Ontario, where I'm from. I had the microphones and stuff, and that was the first episode. So yeah, I would say that I would have expected there to be more solo episodes, like more just like me shooting the shit, but like these are so painful. I really thought it would be easier to just sort of like talk into the void, but I have done a few solo episodes, maybe 3, and it's just they don't come out so naturally. Like it's like for every 45 minutes there's like hours. It just hasn't quite clicked. So then it became like an interview podcast mostly.
And how did you come up with the name?
Okay. So this is Your Strange and Beautiful Life. Well, when I was 2017, so I was like early 30s, I moved into my first apartment that was not with roommates. And it was probably like, I would say the hardest mental health like time in my life. I think I've talked about this before on the podcast, but I had kind of gone on Prozac out of desperation. I was just like it was like, for me, drugs are like a calling. You're like, I really feel like you get called to have drugs. And I was having like before I moved into this apartment, about a year and a half before, I was at sort of like, I was like dealing with a hard breakup, and I just was like, I'm done with like yoga's not working anymore. Please give me some Prozac. So I went to emergency, get the Prozac, become like a poster child for Prozac. I'm like, Prozac made me a better person. There's no prize for not being on medication at the end of your life, which is very true. And I thought, whatever, I'm going to be on Prozac for the rest of my life. And then I accidentally, about 7 or 8 months later, I accidentally doubled my dose for a couple weeks, which is, think that's not going to be a big deal. Very, very destabilizing. And the drug became not possible. Like it became not possible for me to be on this drug. And because it was so like, I don't know, trauma, we're all saying traumatic these days, but it was so destabilizing that I was not open to another medication. And so I went off Prozac fairly suddenly, which was very difficult. And I would say it took me a good year and a half before I had like a recognizable like emotional landscape. Not saying my emotional landscape was ever like, chill, but it became radically worse. So I was going through this hard time and I was living in this apartment, and I had this friend, actually it's James Patterson. He's episode, I don't know, he's one of the episodes in the late 20s, I think. And this is maybe 28. This is Your Strange and Beautiful Life. And I went to visit him, and he had drawings all over his wall. He just like drew like little squiggly, whatever, little diagrams. He's really into coding and animation. And it looked like so fun. And he's like, yeah, writing on your wall is totally the best. So I went to my house. Speaking of calling, so then I had another drug calling, which was for microdosing on mushrooms. So that was part of my calling. So I started microdosing on mushrooms. I started writing on the wall, the living room wall, in scented markers, Mr. Sketch scented markers. And then I would just have these like sentences that just kind of came to me, whatever. It was just like decorating. I can put these pictures of the wall in the show notes maybe. And they were just like quotes like, what will you do with your privilege and your plastic? Another one I liked was, but maybe it's not. Well, like, some deadbeat likes your ass, and this infuses you with the will to live for at least 14 hours. So, like, amazing. They were kind of just like oracles. Like, they just kind of, and it wasn't like all I wrote on the wall for years. I was only doing I only did the magic mushroom microdose, not macrodose, for like a few months. But one of the quotes that came to me was, "This is your strange and beautiful life. You can do all kinds of interesting shit, but you don't have to. Your life does not have to be a spectacular TED Talk." And I just like, there's more to my life story than skipping grade 2, but I was labeled a gifted child at around 6, 7 years old. And it really was quite fundamental in how I turned out. Like, there were no TED Talks in 1992, but I really felt like I had to do something extraordinary with my life. And part of me is really trying to do that still. And part of me is just like, take all the pressure off, which was one of the wall quotes too. All my life has been trying to get the pressure off. So I say the podcast is named after that quote. And also it's like your life does not have to be a spectacular TED Talk, but also like a lot of people didn't get a chance to do a TED Talk, and they have stories you want to hear. Like my grandmother, she just wrote a letter to the editor about the Trump tariffs. She's now 98, but it's just amazing. Like, she's not gonna she's never gonna go on Oprah, but boy, has she left a sparkle. And, it's like the podcast is like a little tiny, what do you call those things? Like just a tiny glimmer of her whole life, right? But it's like something. So yeah, that's the name. Okay, thanks for asking.
I mean, maybe not going on Oprah is better for everyone, considering how many terrible things Oprah has started,
But you're not an Oprah plan?
No.
Okay,
and
yeah.
In fact, I just listened to a podcast about Oprah's career, and it's very impressive, but also it is impressive how many terrible things she birthed into our infosphere.
Like what? Like the weight loss stuff? Like
weight loss, Dr. Phil.
Oh gosh,
Dr.
Phil.
Oz, John of God, and just a lot of toxicity and terrible things.
That's like so interesting. Like people, I mean, Oprah, I will, Super Soul Sunday, whatever you want, I'll still go on Oprah. But it's just so interesting. Like behind every hero, like there's someone who got really fucked over by that person, maybe not, like maybe, but it's just like, in a life, there's so many difficult interpersonal things, right?
I mean, just in Oprah's case, it would be thousands of people.
Don't you think more that like so many people?
Probably more than thousands.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it's so hard to do good in the world without also like, I don't know, like I have like this thought that like you have all these beautiful dreams that you might, like you think that you wanted that, you think you wanted fame, you think you wanted like this huge book deal. Like, don't get me wrong, I'd be happy to have a huge book deal, but like sometimes you're spared. Like I think I wrote this in one of the books I wrote about falling in love with my 11th therapist, but it's like, if you don't end up like landing in like Oprah's emerald green forest. I don't know why I used to think there was an Oprah forest, but it's just like her backyard with these like green chairs. It's like if you don't end up in the Oprah forest, you might actually be spared. Like it might be okay. It might be better.
I think it would be, yeah.
Okay.
Now, your ultimate artistic self-expression is this podcast and storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
How did you start?
Oh, yeah. Well, when I was younger, I was like, I remember like for school, we had to write stories. And I remember thinking the longer your story was, the better. And I would write stories. I would write stories about my swim meets. So that was very autobiographical, a lot of that. Like I was so nervous. I was worried about getting disqualified. Then I did great. And like, yeah, I remember these long stories, but I don't remember there having much in the way of plot. But what I remember a lot of journals and a lot of letters, right? Like a lot of just like I was saying to a friend the other day, like I have enough self-reflection to last me and probably let's say all of Montreal, like the rest of the century, like just a lot of self-reflection. So I would write, like I had journals to my grade 1 teacher, Mrs. Van den Bosch. I'd be like, "Dear Mrs. Van den Bosch, I love you. I love planting flowers." Like just a lot of I to be honest, it's sort of embarrassing. And I wrote a lot of letters to my grandparents, really into routines from like age 7. Right after I skipped grade 2, I was like hyper structured. And every day for like 2 or 3 years, I wrote a letter to my grandma and grandpa who lived in Manitoba, and I really liked the scented markers, and I would like decorate the envelopes with markers, and I would like alternate words with different colors, but like pages and pages of these letters every day. So I really like epistolary form. And then I guess I did like music, like band and things like this.
So you basically started with illuminated manuscripts.
Illuminated manuscripts?
Yeah, you know the term?
No, what is it?
It's in initial medieval manuscripts before the invention of paper, when it was written on vellum. There would be like drawings on the books. The first letter was always the red letter, was some kind of it would be very stylistic. Maybe it would be an animal that looks like a letter, things like that. And all those drawings and different colors, those manuscripts are called the illuminated.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And like it's like your grade 1 journals are sort of like the format is illuminated because it's like half drawings, and then the lines underneath. So you have to illustrate all the way through. Like, I am playing tag with Ellen and Brittany. We are having fun. And then you had to draw a picture up there. So it was illuminated.
Right.
But maybe not with the colored letters. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's what it like. And yeah, just a lot of writing letters. Yeah. So.
And how did it evolve into what we have now?
What we have now? Well, I think everybody told me that I would be a writer. And I was like, okay. But like, it's not like I wrote a novel in high school or anything of great substance besides journals. And I went to McGill to study literature. I was really into books, and then didn't make it at McGill. Like I always thought, I have to write a book. And the first time I thought I have something to write about, I lived and worked at a house for people with intellectual disabilities when I was 19 years old for 2 years. I quit McGill because it was too stressful. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go work with these people, become a writer, find God, what happened. Didn't find God. I filled lots of journals and I thought, this is my life's work. And that was a very difficult book to actually go and write. Like I didn't have the chops for it, but I went to creative writing at Concordia and I did, I wrote some plays. I did some like short stories. Like I always had a hard time with the structure. I just always had quite a lot of writer's block as well. And then, just kind of dabbling in trying to write that book about the people with intellectual disabilities. And then I had, the Oprah blog. Yeah, I think there was a lot of a very autobiographical, what's the word, tendency, right? And I always sort of I think by the time I started that blog or even earlier, I felt like if only I could really show you everything that's inside of me and you could embrace it and find it hilarious and charming and thank me for it. I saw great redemption in authenticity being embraced. And there are pros and cons to that. It didn't
Well, embracing authenticity is very much an Oprah thing.
Yeah.
But I just have to note, we can't just skip over what you said at the beginning. You thought McGill was stressful, so you decided to do something less stressful, which is work in the house for people with disabilities, which is one of the most stressful things.
Oh, yeah.
In addition to becoming a writer and finding God. You thought all those things would be less stressful than McGill.
Yeah, well, McGill was just all these high achievers getting ready for grad school. I was academic writing was hard because it would that doesn't feel authentic to me at all, right? Yeah, none of that worked out in terms of it not being stressful. It was wildly stressful. It was
see why,
so
yes.
stressful. We didn't have our own apartments. So we lived there and I had a high needs house. So we were getting up at 6 a.m. We had stuff to do all the way till 10. Sometimes we got 3 hours off, often not so much. And
is that even legal?
Not anymore. And when I got out of that place for host disabilities, and I have an episode, Jimmy and Isabel are one of the most recent episodes. And it was a very life-changing thing. I'm still in touch with the people, 20 years later. Imagine that we're in an age where I can say I did that 20 years ago. That's so terrifying. Anyways, it's fine. We'll get over it. But yeah, very profound impact on my life. But one of the impacts was I got out of that job and I was okay, what's a thing I can do? And nobody can really control my time ever again. Nobody can. I don't want to have to be I'm just not having kids. I'm not you can't control my time anymore. I want all the me time. And so I became a translator, which can be a flexible gig, not always.
You keep mentioning your embrace of authenticity and autobiographical sort of tendencies. Did you feel that as a child you were not getting enough attention? Did you feel like you were a high needs child?
Oh gosh. I think that my sister and you can see my sister in episode 9 of This Is Your Strange and Beautiful Life. We both have something I call special person syndrome. There are some people who need more attention than other people. For whatever reason they have I don't know if this is where charisma comes from. I don't know where this is a sort of performative element comes from, but they feel you just feel you need to have the main part. And even before I skipped grade 2, I always kind of felt I needed to be the main part, which is so embarrassing. It's very embarrassing. I remember there was a pumpkin concert, a Halloween concert in grade 1 with Mrs. Van den Bosch. And I was I'm Mrs. Van den Bosch's favorite. And who got the pumpkin solo? Who got to sing a boo hoo hoo? And then the rest of the class would respond. I felt I should have gotten that role. But my best friend, Ellen Flanagan got that role. And I was incensed. I was I should have, I should be the main pumpkin, right? But I think that there's some kids who are I need to be the main pumpkin. And I don't know, my parents, I've obviously thought a lot, so much self-reflection about my childhood. My parents gave me violin lessons. They always signed me up for things I seemed interested in. We lived in a small town, so it wasn't too expensive. We were like middle class, but like it wasn't like, it was like things were accessible back then in the 90s. But I don't know, they weren't like, go be a star. But I always felt that you needed to be as good as you could at everything. Like, and then skipping grade 2 made that even worse. So it was like, yeah, just like the sense that you needed to be the best at everything. Like, and that's, I mean, it's not very original, but was my authenticity embraced? I don't know. Like, so in my life's great mythology, I felt like my parents, lovely, very good parents, not a good marriage. And I felt like I needed to just get as busy as I could and try to get out of that. I don't want to say get out of the house. Like, try, like, just do my own thing, just be as independent as possible. Like practice violin in 20-minute increments, like 3 20-minute increments before school started, write the letters to my grandparents, like just like be super structured. But yeah, was my authenticity embraced? I don't know that it is. Like, people have this wound where it's like, oh, my parents don't see me, and like I can't be the real me with my parents. And, it can seem like some tragedy, but it almost seems very obvious, like I'm starting to think maybe that's okay if you're not really your most authentic self with your family. Do you think it's terrible if you're not like?
I don't think it's terrible, but I mean, it depends on, everything's a spectrum, right? I mean, if you feel like you have to become someone completely different with your parents, and it's unhealthy, but maybe some things it's like, you know what, this is my thing, this is not my parents' thing, this is also healthy. It depends. Yeah. It depends on how much of one or the other you're doing. Yeah,
I don't like I wouldn't say I'm inauthentic with my parents, but I'm like a bit compartmentalized. I have this version of Erica, like they couldn't handle, like, I don't want them to necessarily read like I don't want them to read the ecstatic adventures of the exuberant bodhisattva. I think that's horrifying for a boomer to read that. That's okay. They can't deal. But I'm just trying to think, when I was little, you asked if I was a difficult child. I was very emotional. I remember like getting really upset and that being hard for my parents, like just having very big feelings and having to like have to manage them on my own, but not really manage them. Like I remember like crying like a lot till my head hurt. So that was probably that authenticity was hard for the home life, I would say.
I think I have a question, which you're gonna have to cut out that one. So, have you been diagnosed or evaluated for autism or autism spectrum?
Oh, do you think I have it?
I don't know. I don't have enough knowledge to say whether you have it, but from everything I see of people that I know that have been diagnosed, you seem to have some of the.
What are the traits? We can keep this in. I think people love an autism diagnosis.
I think it's hard to say because, again, like when I was diagnosed for ADHD, I was diagnosed by professionals, and it was, I think, an 8-hour evaluation.
Yeah, it's extensive.
I think the autism would be the same thing. Everything I know is more of a pop culture stuff.
Yeah.
Just because the signs are there doesn't mean it is there. Like, I remember my therapist telling me that he didn't think that I had autism. However, because of the way I sort of evolved, I functionally behave as if I do have it.
Like those are your coping skills. Like
that my healthy coping skills developed into sort of what you would have if you had natural autism.
Yeah.
He suspected, but I wasn't actually evaluated, so I might have it. But some of the things you mentioned about
like the hyperstructure.
Oh, the emotionality of it, or crying, sort of being, because a lot of the time when you're neurodivergent, whether it's autism spectrum disorder or something else, you don't feel right in the world, and then you stress over it and you become very emotional over it, and you can be a very difficult child because of it.
Yeah, I think that there's autism. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being autistic, but it's like, I think that there are very sensitive people, right? Like, and I think that I was just like, I do think like the terms of the rigid routines, the sort of like Like sometimes like one thing that's really hard for me, I have to work on like a change in plans, very, very hard for me. Like just this sort of clinging to structure and routines. And then like when that doesn't happen, as an adult, having huge reactions to that. But so, like what is autism? What is a response to like just like being a sensitive child in a certain kind of world? I don't know.
I think some people go to school for 20 years just to try to answer that question, and we still don't have an answer.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say definitely a little, a little divergent and a little sensitive, but I don't know about the autism. And I don't, it's fine. Like I've made a life that's fine for me. I'm okay.
You don't necessarily need a diagnosis.
Yeah.
You just, as long as you're comfortable in your life, sometimes it helps.
Yeah.
So, in terms of creative pursuits, what has been the greatest challenge so far?
Challenge. I think that I think writer's block. I think that there's this huge pressure to do something amazing and then not being able to do that, which is very standard. But I am someone who writes, like I was saying with the blog, like just like it's like inside of me and has to come out. And if I don't have that sort of like pulse and enthusiasm and energy in something I'm working on, I have a very hard time doing it anyways. Like I don't enforce a word count. I don't like, but then I feel really bad about myself. Like I think the hardest part about creativity is judging yourself when you're not doing it, or judging your output like when it's just not there. And that's my worst self, is being like, I should be writing, but I'm not writing. I should be making something, but I'm not making something. And that, the self-flagellation has been the worst part for sure.
I mean, is that also the challenge in your life as well?
In general, the self-flagellation. I should be doing this. I'm not doing this. Things should be like this. They're like this instead. Yeah, like accepting things as they are. Oh.
I mean, being a Russian Jew, it sort of comes with the territory for me. I mean, I guess because I sort of born accepting this part in a way, but it sounds like you could have fit right in with the Eastern Jewish contingent, except for the out emotional
not
output.
Emotional. Oh,
you just keep everything inside.
No crying, no extensive laughing. Okay, no. But like sort of a mourning of how mediocre things are sometimes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that...
And self-flagellation.
Self-flagellation is the big one. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm like an Eeyore. Is that Eeyore? Eeyore. But yeah, it's just the self-flagellation is... And getting old, it's not great to keep self-flagellating. Like, it's getting old. Yeah.
I think, I always think of George Burns' line, you can't help getting older, but you don't have to get old.
Yeah.
And I think about that often, and I think that's, I guess, the challenge in the way of not feeling like, oh, it's another year and I haven't achieved, and just keeping sort of your awe of the world, or, acceptance of how shitty the world is, but keeping it fresh. I think that might be the secret.
Is keeping fresh. But my dance teacher, Lynn Adams, also in this Is Your Strange and Beautiful Life, 5 Rhythms with Lynn Adams, she says, you're young and then you die. So we're all young until you die. I meant, like, I'm not concerned so much about getting old, but I just mean like self-flagellation and the same sort of like the same repetitive thought patterns that always make you miserable. I feel like that's getting old. Like getting old, it's okay. Yeah. Hardest thing, self-flagellation.
So what kind of... We talked about what you dreamed about in the past, finding God, writing a book.
Yeah.
Has that changed? I mean, you've mentioned not finding God, but have your dreams changed?
Oh, I mean, it's very embarrassing, but I have a vision board. It's over in the corner of my apartment. I mean, I have big, like on one hand, I'm very happy with a very simple life, like a job that allows me to have a spacious enough routine where I'm not like, just like hustling minutes and trying, like every part of my day needs to be so rigid and structured. I just like, I want to be able to have time to work out, hang out with my friends, do a creative project or two, and get enough sleep. I'm not interested in gunning it and being like, I'm just like almost like anti-hustle. And so I can have such a simple day and be so pleased with it. And then other days I'm just like, no. And I wouldn't say this happens that often, but on the other side of it is like huge ideals that like, like fulfilling your creative potential, like just, the authenticity thing comes up again, and just like transcendence, flow state. When I think what it says, like the vision board is not, the markers have faded, but like, it says in the vision board, I want to write every day. I want to create every day. I want to have flow state every day. And it's like, well, that's maybe a little aspirational, but I kind of want to I like the idea of flow state every day. Like, I feel like if you can really focus on whatever you're doing, like a little bit every day, like I just think there's a lot of power. Like really, I want immersion. I like whatever the project is, I want to be like really immersed in it. But I don't know that like to always be working on a project you're immersed in. I guess that would be my dream, but I think that that's not always realistic, Is
that what you mean by flow state? When you're sort of immersed and you're just like producing?
Yeah. And you're just like, you don't see the time pass, and you're just like, and it's also like, it has this sort of like flicker. It has some kind of spark, even if it's not ready, like, like it has just, it has some inspiration behind it. Like you feel it's like the best you can do. But can you always do the best you can do all the time? Like yeah, like for me, it's, I said this a lot, but just like what I'm most envious of is like when I see somebody who's just really in it. Like it doesn't like, it's not so much the person who wrote the book and got the attention for it, but it's like, they're just in it. They're writing every day. They're just like, they believe in what they're doing. And I can't always get there. I can't always like believe in what I'm doing. So
yeah. It's always difficult, like especially with your you keep talking about your authenticity and embracing it and expressing it, and I think that's the it sounds like that's the central through line of your creative life and your day-to-day life. So you feel like if you're not embracing it, if you're not expressing it, you feel like you're failing, right?
Yeah, kind of, right? Like it's like, this huge potential in really being like in the insides matching the outsides, and really being a pure expression of yourself. And like, well, I mean, sometimes
I think if you are doing something and you're doing it earnestly, then you are being authentic, whether you see it or not.
Yeah.
It might be the part that you don't necessarily think is authentic, but I think that might be the most authentic part of all.
Yeah, the earnestness. Yeah. And maybe it is all a bit authentic.
What's a successful day to you?
Oh, like just like a work day, or like a
day?
Yeah, I mean, I like to wake up early. I meditate with my friend James and company, and James has a Zoom meditation from 5 till 6 a.m. Like I don't need to start at 5, but I'd like to like meditate like maybe half an hour. But the truth is sometimes I like to just like talk to the meditators afterwards. But like, I guess like for me, wake up early, do some kind of contemplative practice, but I can get through life without meditating sometimes. And I like working out, and I like, like an hour, like an hour or two of like immersion in a project, like whether that's like writing or, an interview. This is going to be a great part of the day. But yeah, like an hour or several hours in a creative immersion situation. But yeah, like for me, the check marks are like working out, sort of like some kind of creative expression, and like, a walk, like going to the library, like perfect day. Like, and I have good days. And then I would like to like have dinner with friends or something,
right.
Connect with people. So it's like creation, like focus, creation, connection, exercise.
So this is what you would do, like if you want to get started on a good foot. So let's shall we say to infuse the beginning of the day with like, I'm hoping there's going to be a good one. This is what you do: meditation, and you wake up.
Yeah.
Well, wake up and then meditate, I would guess, would be a better.
Yeah. And like, but I wonder if it really matters what exactly the things are. Like I definitely, the exercise, something like I definitely maybe not every, but I definitely need that pretty consistently. But I don't know that it matters these like what the check marks are, as long as you're kind of like, for me, it's like about the structure and the consistency. Like it's very soothing for me to sort of have the same touch points throughout my day.
You talked about having writer's block.
Yeah.
This is in my creative life. This has always been difficult, where I feel like I have some kind of a block that I cannot get past, whether it be writing or photography. Is there something you found that works in helping you overcome it?
I would say waiting. And
I'm very good at waiting.
Yeah. Taking the pressure off, maybe trying to work on something else. I mean, for me, you really have to take the pressure off. Like any kind of pressure is not going to work. Like the book that I wrote about the house for people with this intellectual disabilities, which nobody has read this, but I wrote a short story in 2008, right? I was like 22, wrote this short story. It's not bad, but it's not a novel, right? And then I wrote the first 100 pages of that book, I don't know, 5 times, maybe like 5, 6 times. I don't know, like many. And I would always stop around page 100. And then I was like, in August of 2022, I was like, you must finish this book. And I was like, if you write 1,000 words a day, you'll be done in 3 months. And I wrote 1,000 words a day for like 6 weeks. And I was like, God, I've been depressed since August. And I just was like, kind of just miserable. And I'm like, what's happened in August? It was like, oh, you've been forcing yourself to write 1,000 words a day. And I just was like, and I got to a point where I didn't know what to do. I was like stuck. And I don't think that this is good, but I just stopped. And I, I could have, like, people have writers groups, they have mentors. These are all things that maybe would have helped me. But I just was like, I don't want to do this. So I left it, felt like a failure. And then this year in the spring, I started meditating with James. And then whatever reason, I was like, it's fine. I'm going to take that book out again. And I finished it very fast. And I think that one thing that helps me is just knowing that I'm a binge writer. Like maybe I don't know, maybe some people are writing lots and lots every day for their whole lives. But I seem to like I look back and I'm like, oh, I've done a lot. Like I've performed a lot of stories. I have 2 manuscripts, like maybe not not as much as Stephen King, but I have created a lot of things. And my process seems to be erratic. And just telling yourself that, oh, you have an erratic process. So that's like what I do. But I think, people are saying writing groups, accountability. Something else that helped me finish the Vincent book is I hired a professional editor. And she gave me like it was a bit expensive, but she gave me like really concrete feedback. And then I just went into binge mode for a few months. Then it was over. I got depressed. Like that's sort of how it is. It's like, I'll be like in love with a project and then it'll be over, kind of over. I mean, it's never really over. And then I'll be like, oh, what now? So it's like rushing, kind of rush things a little bit. So
sounds like, in a way, this is sort of you using creativity as sort of like a drug that you binge on.
Yeah, I think so, actually. Yeah. And I mean, it's a good drug, but I feel like there's almost like an entitlement and like that you're like deserving of like just this satisfaction and affirmation that you'll get from creation and creativity. I think that my expectations are sort of disproportionate to what's actually available. Like I started doing stand-up comedy like pretty casually in the summer, except I'm not casual, so like casual in that I'm not doing it every night, but like every set was like painstakingly prepared. And I was like, oh, I'm going to like, like you just have this like, oh, my insides will match the outsides. And it's like stand-up comedy is very specific. It's very structured. It's not like, it's very hard. It's a lot harder than it looks. And like, it wasn't that I was bad or anything.
You were good, actually.
I was not bad, but I didn't like, you can't control how the audience reacts to you. I didn't feel like, it's like, I feel like I should get this great redemption from every time I go on stage or every time I make something. And I was talking to my friend Kyle about this, like kind of upset about, I don't know what. I don't know if it was, I've been trying to like get in the flow with some new project or something. And I was just like, all I want is to be creative. All I want is like for this to be, a success. All I want, like, basically I want this to save my life. Right. And I feel like my whole life I've been like writing and sex. I felt like I put this on this pedestal that these are like the ultimate, like if you're fucking and you're writing or you're making something, like this is like your life will be fine. Nothing will bother you. And the thing is, it does make your life a bit better. It's really great to have like regular sex, like, shout out to everybody who has helped make that happen over the years. But it doesn't, like, that's the problem is like life can't be solved by creativity. It can't be solved by, right? So I think that as helpful as like making stuff can be, it's not everything, right?
I have difficulty with that. Like I used to love photography, and then something happened where like I could look through the viewfinder and feel the frame. Like, and then I might not be right. It might be a bad framing. It might be a bad shot. And more often than not it was, but I had a feeling and I've kind of lost that feeling.
Okay.
And even though I still love photography, every time I pick up the camera, it's like, it doesn't feel right. It feels like there's a part that's dead.
Yeah.
And I blame myself for it all the time. Like every time I see my camera, it's like I feel bad about it.
This big shame that like you failed. No, that is
like I failed myself.
The worst.
And so,
but do you think you failed yourself? Like, do you want to? Like, what if you just don't want to do it anymore?
Well, that's the difficult part. And that's maybe we're all of us who are adults are basically children and we are our own parents now.
Yeah.
And we are now tasked with, okay, well, you want to do this, but you also have to have a job where you get the money.
Yeah, money is very distracting. Like,
I don't know how to deal with this.
Like the glorification that being an artist, making things, like, even being like an influencer or something, like making content, whatever it is more honorable, is better for the world than like just like doing work, right? Like doing work, like being in the world. And I like PS, a lot of people have jobs and they make art. Like, I've had my share of fun employment, but like, I've had jobs. I'm not independently wealthy. So we're going to do a listener question. It's from my vision board jumped off a bridge in 2011. Okay. And listeners, this is a little long, but it's worth it. Okay. Dear Erica and Vad, I'm in my early 40s and I've recently made peace with the modest fixings of my adult life. When I was in university, I studied international development and I thought I'd end up joining the Peace Corps and working for the UN or doing something similarly praiseworthy and altruistic. Instead, I am trucking along at a humble 9-to-5. It is not particularly glamorous or even fun, and sometimes it takes up more energy than I have. Who's been there? But it lets me pay for my life with relative ease, and I can splurge on treats to make up for some of the inconvenience. One of my favorite parts of life is my group of friends. We met in university and never lost touch. That's lovely. At least once a week, we get together to eat and shoot the shit and online shop for deals and laugh at reality TV clips. I know I am so lucky to have these people and this outlet, but lately I've felt a bit triggered by one of my friends. Let's call him Alex. Alex has a similar livelihood as I do, though maybe it doesn't drain him quite as much. But it's like he feels oppressed by steady income and benefits. He's constantly berating the complacency and grind of a day job, how the 9-to-5 is a crime against humanity that strips us of our joy and physical health and creative potential. Oh. Alex. He's constantly pouring himself into self-improvement projects, impossible fitness regimes, the keto diet, life coaches, empowerment conferences, and mysterious online communities where bright-eyed and Botoxed high achievers exchange life hacks for optimizing their existence according to their vision board. At least 2 of these endeavors reek of some kind of cult or pyramid scheme. Goodness. Alex always claims to be on the cusp of some pinnacle of ultimate growth, but he never seems to get there. I watched him ride up and down these waves of hope and possibilities, only to fall into deep discouragement and depression when the diet or the ayahuasca journey or conference failed to launch him into the life he was meant to live. It's exhausting to watch. And it makes me feel like because I accept my own gig and simple life, that he's probably judging me for being complacent and unambitious. Do you think I should say something? He is more or less driving me nuts. Love, my vision board jumped off a bridge in 2011. Okay, so listeners, you can read the entire question in the show notes. Refer to that. So Alex, sub in ayahuasca self-improvement for creativity, right? It's like he is also looking for great redemption outside of what's a conventional life, right?
Well, I feel like we could record just an entire episode just about this question, but
yeah, we could.
It's difficult because there's so many scammers. Basically, let's call them what they are: scammers peddling a better you, and taking advantage of you. And God knows Oprah promoted so many of them through the book club and through other stuff, and no one else really can give your life meaning. I've always struggled with the meaning of life, especially being an atheist. I went through several religion phases, different religions, and in the end, none of them rang any true. The meaning of life is a difficult one. In fact, I think I struggled with it until a couple of years ago when I read a book by Lulu Miller, Why Fish Don't Exist, I believe the name is.
Why Fish Don't Exist?
Yeah.
Okay. Because they can't remember?
No, because there's no such thing as fish.
Oh.
Because the things that we call fish, they're so different. We just call them fish because they live in the sea. I think she gives an example of imagine if we called all the animals who live in a mountain mish, but you have birds and you have mammals and you have this and you have that. They have nothing to do with each other. They just happen to live in the same environment. So I think humans might be closer to, sturgeon genetically than to something else.
I think I heard this. Okay.
So technically, because there's such a huge variety of sea life, there really isn't such a thing as fish.
Okay.
So, but the book started about that, but then her life changed, and she went through certain events in her life, and she struggled.
Like what?
Well, I don't want to spoil it for people because I think people should really read it.
Read this. Okay.
But they were
fish.
Why fish don't exist, and there's breakups, and then there's mental health challenges. And Lulu Miller is a fantastic podcaster.
What's her name again?
Lulu Miller.
Lulu Miller. Okay.
She, I think her most famous endeavor is called Radiolab.
Oh, okay. That's popular.
She is current main co-host of Radiolab, and she had another podcast, and she talks about realizing what for her meaning of life is. And I realized it literally is the only book that ever made me cry at that moment when where I realized, I think she's right.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not going to be right for everyone, but I think everyone should give this book a chance.
Okay.
And it may help you
to find the meaning. Well, it's just once I agree that people talking about keto diets and their cure for life is insufferable. It's insufferable.
Because it's the outward expression of yourself, right? It's not the inward part, and the inward part is what gives meaning. I think in her case, it would be the people around you and giving of yourself to the people around you, living your earnest life with your family and your friends, and giving of yourself to your community, the people around you, your chosen family, your actual family, is what gives it meaning in a way that having them is what life is all about. Surrounding yourself with people you want to be in your life, I think that part also gives the life meaning. So dieting, listening to people out
But
promising you.
cults are very upsetting.
I
It's very
know.
upsetting when your friends are in cults. It's like a bad relationship.
They make you feel like your life has meaning being in them, but in reality is they can't give your life meaning. Only you can give your life meaning yourself.
But do you think she should say something to Alex about like how it's driving her nuts? Like,
I think she should first think about why it's driving her nuts, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is it because she sees him as being unhappy, or is it because the actual thing, the cults themselves or the groups themselves that drive her nuts? And I think she should definitely be open with her partner about that.
Yeah,
and I think maybe sometimes people have to decide whether being with a partner that is plunging into a sea of toxicity, maybe it's time to not be with them anymore.
This is a long-term friend, not a partner.
Oh, it's a long-term friend.
That's it.
So again, yeah, it might be the case of being open with your friend and saying, I will support you, but I can't approve of this.
Yeah.
I will support you in you being you, but I can't support you in you continuing on this downward path.
You would say that to a friend? Like, and this is like something I grapple with listener questions, and just like, how much are you supposed to tell your friends? Like, because the thing about friends is it's so optional, and it's just a bonus having a friend. And I'm in some ways, having a partner should always, or a lover should also be like that. Like, it should all be a bonus. We should all be like, wow, we could have been alone and we're together, you know, hooray for this. But how much, like, how honest are you supposed to be with your friends, right? Because it's not like, you know, I'm sure I talk about things nobody wants to hear about too, right? And it's
right.
like we can't, you know, you can't like curate conversation. And I've had people sometimes, well, here's something that I go on and on about a little bit that's not, I think, hard for people. Is like sometimes if let's say somebody talks about a death or somebody's illness in passing, I get really fixated on that. And I want to keep talking about it for more than the 3 minutes that everybody else wanted to cover the topic, right? And
I've seen that in the real life. It's quite it's an experience.
And then we're going to talk about the spinal cord injury again. And did you know? So yeah, and that I mean, I think the best thing is to gently change the subject rather, because I've had people be like, can we talk about something else? And sort of like this cold, you're wasting my time thing. And that hurts my feelings. But like, I understand too. And it's okay to hurt your friend's feelings sometimes.
I think at some point you should say something to the friend, because it's when you, otherwise, is that really a friend if you don't care about what happens to them? Yeah.
I just wonder, like, well, cults and stuff like that. I guess it's just like there's some like abusive relationship vibes in cults.
Absolutely.
And I find, you know, or let's say you don't like your friend's partner. Like, I find that the best, I don't know. I'm torn about whether to speak up, because I like, if you speak up and they continue to be sort of like coerced and manipulated by the cult or the abusive partner, whatever it is, then they might shut you out. So then you're not a safe place anymore. So
I think it's important to ask the friend, why are you really doing this? And have you considered, I think everyone should do therapy, and saying, just do some therapy and ask yourself, why are you doing this? Is this really what you want to do? And if it is, okay. Yeah. Because we can't really stop people from wanting to do what they want to do, even if it's self-destructive.
It's very like, it's just a very humbling and obvious lesson, but it's just like, you're not in charge of other people's feelings and their lives, and they're not in charge of yours. Right. Like, what the fuck? When did that happen? You know, like,
I know. Yeah. I mean, I'll give you an example from what I struggled with is when the pandemic started, I found some people who I thought were perfectly normal people express some bonkers views.
Oh, yeah.
And there's some people that I liked, and I was like, should I unfriend them?
Yeah, did you?
I did some. Depends on how insane What they were like. I unfriended some people, but there are some people who was like, I can't bring myself to unfriend them because this is someone I cared about.
Yeah.
We might not be hanging out right now, but a person I cared about. And I don't necessarily want to shut off that avenue. I don't want to reject them.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, like it just, to be able to give people feedback without them being rejected, feeling rejected. Oh, I don't know. But I think, yeah, congratulations to you. I'm not congratulations to you for like accepting the humble fixings of your adult life. Like that's healthy.
I mean,
That's
if you
good.
can embrace it, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think
How are you feeling about this?
the answer or the listener question,
or everything.
I think that we'll see how I find like the listener question was a little bit complex.
It's a tough one.
Yeah. I did a blog post on it and I was wondering about like posting the blog post. I was just like, nobody will read it. But yeah, it's a little like just kind of what we were talking about, like this expectation that like you would do something really great and then taking like a 9 to 5, but that's fine because you can buy skincare you like.
You know, I always think about the words of Kurt Vonnegut about how, I don't remember exactly the quote, but he was talking about how you don't need to be the best. If you can do something, if you can be even half-ass it, do it. Don't be the best at everything. If you can just do something, do it badly. There's value in doing things badly. There's value in doing something mediocre, because at least you're doing it and you're being true to yourself in doing it. Even if it's not very good.
Yeah, but I think the danger of like social media and influencers and, you know, even AI, because you can just ask ChatGPT anything. And there's just sort of this illusion that we should be able to optimize every area of our lives. Like there's a way so that we can like drain our lymphatic systems, avoid cancer, like have just like a shredded body, read like, you know, 20 books a month and like, you know, do your side hustle. And there's just this sort of like, it's just this illusion that we should be able to be really good at everything. And the thing is, if you have a group of friends that you're having dinner with every week, that's pretty good. Like if you go to the library and read a book every once in a while, you're doing like, you're kind of winning, right? So it's like, but people feel like they have to do everything, and that's exhausting.
It is.
Yeah.
Do you feel like we have done everything we can with this episode?
This podcast? Yeah, I feel like we've maybe done everything. Do you think there's anything we didn't cover? Did you?
I think we did good.
Because we did the morning routines.
I think we did. It doesn't matter about the routines. I think it's. Yeah. We came full circle.
Yeah. Okay, that's really good. Okay, so well, thank you so much, Vad. Thank you for hosting. You're the first guest host on This Is Your Strange and Beautiful Life.
Thank you for having me.
And everybody follow This Is Your Strange and Beautiful Life on all your favorite podcast platforms. Thank you as always to my darling big sister, Tess Levitt. All the love to you. You're the best. Episode 9, everyone. Big Heart Journey with Tess Levitt. Thank you to Sherwin Tijia, my creative advisor and most cherished friend. Thank you to Eileen Gunn, my dearly departed aunt who helped fund this podcast equipment, you know, and just take the edge off finances. And thank you to you, dear listeners. So I don't know what the schedule is going to be. I'm just kind of like coasting a little bit these days. So we're just going to play things by ear, do what I do best, chill, chill, chill. And I think we're going to wrap up with the theme song. Are you going to sing the theme song, Vad?
I don't. I think we're going to have to leave the listeners desiring for more in terms of me singing the song.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. Ready? This is your strange and beautiful life.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Thanks again, Vad. Oh, Vad, did you want people to follow you on the internet?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
But maybe one day when I resurrect my artistic pursuits,
Photography. Okay.
We can talk about it.
All right. Stay tuned, everybody. Thanks again. Love you. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, everybody. It's Erica. So, as Vad and I mentioned, this is an extensive listener question. And as fate would have it, I wrote a long form blog post version. And I decided, why not revive the blog on my website, ericajschmidt.com, at least briefly, and publish some of the more in-depth thoughts I had for our friend. My vision board jumped off a bridge in 2011. So you can read my thoughts for free at ericajschmidt.com/blog. My thoughts are abundant. It is a lengthy piece, but that's really good for your little brain. You can bring a snack. You can put your legs up the wall. You can read it on your phone in the bathroom at work. Recommended. And while you're at it, feel free to check out my other essays. For example, there's the Mammoth Complex, where I dig into my body image and eating disorder struggles. Click away, give the blog some love. It has had a bit of a dry spell. And yeah, share your favorite entries with your favorite peeps. This would be so appreciated. Feel free to do the same with your favorite podcast episodes. Okay, thank you so much. ericajschmidt.com/blog, ericajschmidt.com/podcast. Thank you so much. Love you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.